Hey there, G3XE here, and today we're going to be looking at how I would do space combat in a space RPG, tabletop RPG like Starfinder. So recently I've been watching a lot of videos from the YouTube channel The Complex Games Apologist, and he has been putting out a lot of content about how he's prepping for the release of that game as a GM, right, as a game master or dungeon master. It's really interesting to see his style and his methods, because they really, if you're interested in being game master, it'll definitely get you pumped to really delve into creating your world, right? Anyway, so there's a lot of discussion on that channel about Starfinder, and you can definitely look to Paizo and to all sorts of sites on the internet. They'll be talking about rumors, and it's going to drop in August, I believe. But anyway, I just wanted to share some thoughts because it got my brain thinking about space combat. And from what it sounds like, it's going to be pretty cool. And like every player at the table is going to have a different position. So think Star Trek, where they're like, blah blah, what are our engines like? And he's like, oh no, they're bad. And he's like, oh shit, That was a great impression, I know. Anyway, but I'm going to be drawing from a war game called War Machine. And War Machine is doesn't really have anything to do with space, but it has a really interesting way of injuring these steam mech things, these warjacks as they're called in the game, that are these big hulking robot things, right? And they have different parts to them. And the way that you damage them is that they have this grid, and when you do damage, it goes down the grid, and then if, let's say, in its right arm is a gun, on that grid at one square is a gun, or is his right arm, excuse me. Once you damage that square on the grid, his right arm becomes damaged or inactive or whatever. So I was thinking that's a really good effect, and it would also allow people to build out their own spaceships and feel very proud of what they've done. So this is just my piece of paper, hopefully it'll read, of how I would do space combat. So the basics were, and maybe this could be like a mod to Starfinder, maybe Starfinder already has something like this, but I don't know. This is just what I was throwing around, and I'd like to get opinions on the ideas and how I could build on it and hopefully share it with other people. So every ship will have a grid, an X and Y axis, of their, essentially their like engine floor room, or engine floor, the deck of the ship that's devoted to all the like mechanics, right? The engine room, essentially. And then for smaller ships, there'll be a smaller grid, and for bigger ships, a bigger grid. So you can see down here, I have a skiff, which is a 3x3, the smallest that they go, and then a galley, which is a 4x7, I believe, which is, a medium-sized ship. Now, these will be different, like, ship classes. I don't know if, like, a Class A is smaller or bigger than a Class D, that might be world-specific. But those are the ships. Now, the red dot means the place that is the core, and that is where you must start building, right? So the first block you place when building out your floor plan or whatever, or your ship's engine plan, has to be placed there. Then each block that you place must be adjacent, not diagonal, so above or to the side or below another block that you've already placed. And that's how you build it out, right? Anyway, so what blocks are you placing? Well, here's kind of a list. So we have L is just life support. N is going to be navigations. S is scanners, right? Those are, sorry, there's a gnat. Those are required. So I have the number required on the other side of the paper here, and those are all at 1. Now, life support is 1 per, but you add 1 per ship class that you go above, right? So let's say galley, like we looked at before, was 1 ship class above a skiff, then it would require 2 life support blocks instead of just 1. And then stuff that's not required but might be useful: C for cargo, G for gun port. Cloaking, I just put a question mark because there was already one with C. A shield for a shield generator, which will make you, whenever you take damage, you have to go through a shield before you can actually start doing damage to the grid. A B for this is how the ship moves, right? So you need a battery to power all the electric stuff. Maybe, I don't know, you can make up like ion battery or whatever. And again, that's one, but you add one for each class level. So a skiff only needs one battery. Galley might require 2 batteries. Then F for fuel cell. I need at least one of those, but the more you have, the farther you can travel, right? If you run out of gas, you run out of gas, or whatever the fuel is. And then E for engine. And you need 1 engine per 9 squares. So a skiff requires 1 engine. A galley, I believe, will require 3 engines, right? So, or 3 engine blocks, I should say, right? Because it's a heavier ship, it requires more engines to push it. Now, I don't know if any of this is applied to actual physics and science, but in my head, this is how it kind of works, right? Now, how do ships fight each other? Because this is space combat, right? Well, here are some example weapons that I've drawn up. So, here's laser blasters. Now, weapons will have 2 different characteristics, an accuracy and a damage. So the laser blasters are just your basic weapon. They have a 1d4 in both. Now the accuracy is how far along the x-axis you go. You start out at 0, roll the die, and then go to the number. So a laser blaster could start at 1, but could go all the way up to 4. Now if a whole entire column is already blown out, right? Then you can start at whatever column is, sorry, my washing machine's being super loud. Whatever column is not blown up, right? So, the laser blasters, because they're a simple weapon, they'd be pretty good against a skiff, right? Because, you have a pretty good chance of getting to the core. But against a galley, you're going to have to be shooting it a bunch until you can get to its juicy bits, right? Then the damage is how many blocks you X out, right? So laser blaster also does a D4. So against a skiff, there are 6 things we already know are required, right? There's life support, navigation, scanners, a battery, a fuel cell, and an engine. So that takes up 6 of these squares. Then you have 3 to add whatever you want. So you might add a cargo hold, then maybe a gun port, and maybe cloaking or something, right? Well, if you have accuracy of D4, I mean, you have a pretty good chance of getting into the life support and navigations and all that. If your navigations gets taken out, you don't know where you're going. You have to look out the window and judge that way. If your life support gets taken out, guess what? You have, 3d6 hours or whatever of air until you're dead. So stuff like that I think would be really cool. And then it would make someone who's good at engineering can go down and repair those things. Or keep spare parts to make it easier, right? But then again, if you have a galley, you can keep all your goodies, your life support, all the stuff that is very, very critical far here, right? And then maybe down here you might have some gun ports and other stuff, and then so your gun might get blown up. Okay, you can't use that gun. It's not as bad as getting your life support blown up. So anyway, it kind of creates a little mini game there. And also, I think, inspires creativity into how you want to lay out this design. Because if we look more through the things, there are weapons that do more damage, but aren't, less accurate, right? Piercing beam is still more accurate than laser blasters, but it does a ton of damage. So you're looking at, you have the potential to blow out 2 whole columns, maybe 2.5 with this thing. And on the skiff, you could blow that thing up in 1 hit. Heat Seeker is the opposite, although it's actually pretty good, but it's 1d6 damage, so still pretty good damage, but 1d12 accuracy. So you are going to get really close to that critical stuff, right? But then you play the game of, okay, well, where do I want to place my critical life support and whatever. You might say, okay, well, we're going up against weapons that have lots and lots of heat seeking, and maybe I'll fake them out and put all my life support at the very beginning so that they go past it and they accidentally hit my cargo instead. Something like that. I don't know. I think it adds a lot of depth, and it'd be really fun, and it's pretty simple, and it will get people jumping in who might not have anything to do if they're not the captain or the gunner, right? during a battle. Like an engineer would be like, oh crap, okay, our life support's on fire, and our, fuel tank is leaking and has a chance of blowing us all to hell. Like, which one do I go fix? Like, this is, I just feel like it would be very, it would lean itself towards some very, like, intense, cool scenes. And then the other thing that, because you have to have multiple life supports and engine squares per size of your ship as you get bigger, like, imagine the biggest cruise ship having that's like a whole, maybe a 50 by 50 X and Y axis, right? You're going to require a lot of those life support and engines blocks, right? So you, getting one blown up won't really affect you. You might be slowed down. You might have to go repair that one life support thing, but you can kind of one good shot that does a lot of damage might just do, like, okay, you've taken out 1/12 of all of my life support cores, like, no big deal, I'm gonna blast you with torpedoes. So it also makes big ships seem really, really scary, because, like, look at all of that array that you have to take down. And final point, sorry, I'm rambling, but I think it'd be cool if you board a ship, then you can go find these things and take them out specifically. So you send in a strike force, and they're like, and you tell the strike force your one mission is to take out their life support or take out their navigations. Maybe they take out their navigations, and then they can't see you at all as you cruise up and get, like, critical hits on all their stuff. Like, you could say, well, just like a sneak attack when regular D&D combat, a sneak attack from a ship to another ship gives it an extra D6 accuracy, right, or something like that. Anyway, that is my take on space combat. Maybe this has already existed or whatever, I don't know. Like I said, I stole this from a war game called War Machine, but, added the space stuff into it. And let me know how you like this, and definitely, if you've not done so, go subscribe over to the Complex Games Apologist, especially if you want to learn more about Starfinder and some prep you can do as a GM. To get ready for its release. Thanks.